Welcome to the first. You have a story. If you look back on your life, you've done things for the first time that no one in your family, in your town, in the country has done. This is Dr. Sandi. You have unknowingly paved the way for others without knowing it or even acknowledging it. This is where you tell your story so that those who come after you can walk in your footsteps to build their own firsts. Today, my guest is Lynne Lambert, who's the creator of two companies. The first is the New York City subway line, which is a clothing and accessories company using custom New York City subway products like the number one train or the A train, and this is placed on business gifts and promo giveaways. The innovative concept of our other company, tGear, offers unique and personalized items that capture people's attention using maps from your city or your town. Lynne believes in the power of storytelling through swag and business gifts, emphasizing that they don't have to be limited to logos, but can showcase the location's uniqueness. With a background in acting and advocacy, she's inspired to revolutionize the promo industry by offering high-quality products that leave a lasting impression. You can find Lynne on Instagram at NYC Subway Line or on Instagram at tGear. That's MAPTGEAR. Welcome, Lynne Lambert. Hey, everybody, this is Dr. Sandi. It's my podcast, The First with Dr. Sandi. And today I have a longtime friend that I know, Lynne Lambert. Welcome, Lynne.
Thank you. Good to be here.
And we're going to talk, as usual, about our first. And Lynne, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what your firsts are, and whether it's 1, 2, 3, or 10. We don't care. Just get it all out there and then we'll talk about it.
Sounds good. So I was an actor for a long time. I was a working actor, so don't look for my name, and you're not going to find big celebrity profiles on me. But I was, traveling all over New York to my auditions and bookings. I did some on-camera commercials, but mostly I did voiceovers, tons of TV voiceovers and radio commercials. And I loved it. It was so fun. It took me 2.5 years after I got to New York to get my first job, even though I had worked in the Baltimore, Washington area before I came up to New York. So it was rather intimidating. I'd be at auditions with Broadway stars and some movie stars and stuff, and then the rest of us working actors competing with them for jobs. But ultimately, I had a very successful career in voiceovers, and I loved it. The hard part about being an actor is one of them for me was I was never a great beauty. And so,
Say that is not true.
you're sweet, but like it always felt like, not pretty enough, not tall enough. Wish she was blonde. My hair was brunette at the time. Like just not enough. And I don't also tend to photograph well. Even my husband had to agree after trying to get a decent photo of me for about 5 years, our first 5 years together. And I have a tendency to say that I have a face made for radio. But anyway, so I had that wonderful career, and it wasn't bounded by what I looked like, which is kind of like why I had fallen in love with acting, from the beginning, from the time I was a little girl. I just loved the idea that your imagination was good enough to make you become anything,
Yes.
anybody, that I could make people believe that I was this person, and my imagination could create a person to become. And yet when you hit the actual paying industry of being an actor, right away it's so much about looks that you can't do that. So your ability to do this is suddenly narrowed to this, like anatomy is destiny. And I'm not at all the only person that happened to. And when I started in the industry, it was so not inclusive. Uh, what they wanted was always white. It wasn't just, it was also of a certain age and a certain kind of look and all that stuff. So the good news is that that part of it has broadened. But I'm also a trustee of my union's health and retirement funds. And so we
Mm,
see the hiring statistics. That's my like volunteer work to try to help other performers. And we see the statistics, and it's very, very clear that over 40, the employment possibilities start going down. The income of actors over 40 and other performers over 40, singers, broadcasters, starts going down. And it happens, of course, wouldn't it? So much faster to women.
yeah.
They just like their women to be the cute young ones. They like working with them. And once you start looking like, their mother, um, it's just not the same. They don't get the same pleasure out of it. So there's a tremendous amount of age discrimination. So all this to say that though I loved my career, my life, I was actually very successful in it. I had a good savings and nest egg. I bought myself my own little house, and ultimately an apartment as well. And and I'm from a very working class, middle class background, so I knew how to save money, not to spend on the frivolous things, I would say, but more to save it for those important type of things. Um, and suddenly, after I had my son and was in my 40s, um, the opportunities to work, even the auditions started dropping off. So I didn't have a plan B. And yet I had realized even before in a vague way that I love to be passionate about my work. And so if for whatever reason my career started drying up, that I would have to find something else to be passionate about because I needed that. I needed
Did
that
you not,
thing
did you
in my
not,
life.
did you not have like a second career in mind? You were just always straight out acting and that was it. That was your
Yeah.
career.
And I actually naively thought since I was in the voiceover end of it, getting older wouldn't matter.
I would think
And
so too.
it's just at that period in time, you still had to show up at an audition, or at the very least at the recording session. And my last lucrative employment as an actor, I was in my early 40s, and I had auditioned to be the voice of a college girl for Pilot Pens. And when I walked into the studio, their eyes got this big. I had auditioned just at the studio with a sound engineer who had nothing to do with the project. And their eyes got that big, and they literally started sweating. And they were so concerned. And they basically said, can we have a few minutes? And they called my agent and they said, did you send us the wrong person? They told the owners of the studio, why would you bring her in for this audition? She's clearly wrong for it, all this stuff. And they had hired me from my voice recording, right? So finally they decided, they were convinced, okay, just give it a try with this one. If we have to replace her, we will. So they brought me back into the studio and they said, you know, this is supposed to be a 19-year-old girl. And I said, I know, I don't look it, but I can sound it though. And they were like, okay. And I went in, and the first take was perfect. And they did a few more, but honestly, the very first take was perfect. I knew what I was doing. And I left, and they used it, and it ran, and it made some good money for me, which was good. But my agent said, we have a problem because what we're being told is don't don't do that again. Don't send in somebody who doesn't look the role, even for a voiceover. That's a problem.
Wow.
So I have a young voice, and I especially did, then. And so my careers just started getting less and less and less, and they wouldn't have me for the age that I sounded like. And
Right.
then there wasn't that much for women in their 40s. They weren't asking for that. So it was like, it just went away and it was very sad. So no, I had no second career in mind. But in this period of time, I was, for those of you who know Brooklyn, I was waiting for a train at Borough Hall in Brooklyn, and my son was turning 5, and I was waiting for a 5 train, and I started thinking, you know, what if I could get a number 5 train T-shirt and just
Mhm.
give it to all those little kids who are turning 5, all the birthday parties my son will be invited to. He'll be invited to like a dozen of them. And as a working mom, I have to figure out what I'm going to get for all these little kids. But if I had a number 5 train T-shirt, it would be perfect. I could give it to all of them, like that would solve all my problems. But then I started thinking about it some more, and it was the middle of the day, so it took a while for a train to come. And I'm like, yes, but I could also see if your name's Allie, you could get an A train. Or if your favorite train is the F train, that's a train you take every day, you might need an F train t-shirt. And by the time I got home, I practically burst through the door and said to my husband, who is a born and bred New Yorker, grew up on the Lower East Side, I said, honey, I just came up with this great idea. People could wear their subways. And I started describing it to him, and he took this long pause and he said, honey, the world doesn't need another t-shirt. So he just didn't think it was a good idea. And I said, you don't get it. You grew up here, but to me, like when I drive in or take the elevated train in and I see that New York City skyline at night, I get
Yes.
goosebumps.
Yes.
It's so exciting. It's so cool. New York City is just cool and it's exciting, and these are a quintessential part of New York City. So if you put these circles together with something about New York City, that's going to be something that people want. And so that
Yes.
was my light bulb idea back now 28 years ago. And so
And
for a
it's
while I
totally
did.
a simple thing too. It's just a simple idea, and look where it got you. But all everything that we touch and see started out with a simple idea of, hey, why don't I do this? Or people would like that. And it's a big tourist industry as well.
I know that when I came to New York, one of the things I wanted to do was take the subway, and the subways were pretty bad at that time. That was like like early mid 1970s.
Okay.
But it didn't matter that it was bad. That the service was bad. Like you're like this, like they feel like they're going to come off the rails. But it was New York City. There were it was like such a diverse population inside those subway cars. I had grown up in the suburbs. And so this was like, wow, this is a feast for people watching. Everybody from those Wall Street guys who at the time were in what I thought were their $300 suits, which was a big deal. Now probably $3,000 suits, but anyway, to like welfare families with all their kids, all on the same subway car, all living their lives.
Homeless people right along with them.
Yes. And I love that about New York, and I love that about the subways. And so that's when I started my line. I took my idea to the New York Transit Museum. There was an outpost of it at Grand Central. And I showed it to the manager there, and she liked it. And she said, why don't you draw these up for me? So I went down the street. By this point now, I had moved to the suburbs, and I went down the street where my son waited for the bus. And I noticed that the little kids who lived in the house where the bus stopped had the most beautiful cookies I'd ever seen. There were like faces and animals, and I was like, and so when the mom popped out one day, I said, "Oh, excuse me, are you a graphic designer? Because oh my God, I try to get your kids not to eat the cookies because they're too pretty to be consumed." And she said, "Yeah, that's my background." And so I asked her if she could help me draw these things up. So we sat at her kitchen counter with different sized plates with making the circles, right? Drawing around them. And I took those drawings to the Transit Museum, and she said, "I love these." And I said, "Well, can I make some for you?" And she said, um, "I think you have to get a license from the MTA first." And I said, "A license? What's that?" I had no idea. So I set up an appointment with the person she put me in touch with at the MTA, their marketing guy. And I said, "I have this idea." He said, "Yeah, I think it's really cool." And he said, "It's interesting because we were just thinking about getting a licensing agent. So we're very close to doing that. So as soon as we get that company in place, I'll get in touch with you and I'll connect you guys and see what happens." So that only took a few months, and then um, they I met with them, and they were like, "Why would we want to give you a license? What background do you have in this industry?" And I was like, none, but I could get this done." And they
Right.
were like, "Yeah, okay, fine. We'll, think about it." So they kicked it around for about 6 months. And I think in that time, they went to every silk screener they'd ever given a contract to. And they had their own designs, which I didn't particularly care for. But mine were very pure. Theirs were like too busy. And they showed them, I'm sure, and
So Lynn,
everybody.
they went to other people with your idea to create a design for it?
It was my designs, but it was designs that had the subway symbols in them, their own designs. I
Okay.
had my own design ideas, but they
Okay.
basically were just trying to tempt somebody to take this license. And at the time, New York was a very dangerous place, and the subways were not a fun place to be in many ways. So I think they probably got the same reaction I did when I first showed my line to potential buyers, which was, "Oh my God, the subways, they're dirty and smelly and dangerous, and why would anybody want to wear something like that?" And which was
Right.
the reaction for the first like year maybe. And then other people would say, "Oh, like Mind the Gap." And I was like, "Huh? What? What's that?" And they said, "In London, they've been doing products with their subways on it, their underground on it for years." And I said, "Oh, I had no idea because I'd never been there. I just wasn't aware of it." So as things progressed, people went from like, "Ew, subways on a t-shirt," to like, "That's my train. That's a piece of my life. That's part of me." So New Yorkers started buying them, and then tourists who thought the subway experience was part of New York started buying them, and we started making hats, and companies like Barnes and Noble wanted, our product, and you know, all the museum stores, a lot of them were interested, and sort of evolved. And I'm very proud of it because I feel like I've created an iconic brand, New York City subway line, that'll be around forever.
And
Um,
you know what? It's what you said about iconic. Even if there's a different take on it or you do a different things, because when I met you, you didn't have the map. You didn't have the map.
wow, I still didn't have the map. Yeah,
Right?
that came in
You
a little
just had,
later. You're right.
what year was that? Like 2006,
I think you're
7,
right. Yeah.
around then. And to watch where you've been, I'm looking at the stuff behind you with the NYC, and I think you had something similar to that, but
We
you didn't have
mostly would
like.
do like the A train or the F train or all the trains around in a circle, but the map opened up a whole other world.
So tell me how you went from where you were with just doing the individual trains to actually inputting, and combining that with the map.
So I think, there's a guy that I really have so much respect for. He was one of the original licensees. I don't know if you've ever seen his products, but he would take actual subway tokens and make things like cufflinks out of them and put them in a beautiful Tiffany-like box with a subway map lining. They're just gorgeous and talk about iconic. And he and I became friends, and he said, "You ought to think about using the map." And I knew that most of the shirts I was making were like a two-color shirt, a blue circle with a white letter A or a yellow
Right.
circle with a black letter
Mhm.
R. So it was a little intimidating, and I started kicking it around and asking some of the silk screeners if they could do the map, and that was like a 12 color shirt. So they were going, not really, or we can do 8 or we can do 10, but we really can't do 12. So I knew I had a technical problem there. And then I came up with the idea of what if the map just took over the whole front of the shirt? And so it wasn't just a panel, like a rectangle on the shirt, but it was the whole shirt. And it looked so good on paper. And then I tried to find production for it, and it turned out that, the garment industry in New York died a while ago. And
Yes.
and uh, the fabric manufacturers in the South, where the cotton was, were had put their machinery out on outside and let it rust because nobody wanted
This is,
to
yeah,
hire them. It had all gone to China and offshore.
yeah.
So I couldn't find anywhere. So along the way, I found somebody who was doing production in China, and they've made my first batch of these shirts with a map all over the front, and they immediately took off, which I actually really needed just as a business because there are 26 different subway lines. So in terms of how production gets affordable is the quantity per design.
Right.
So once you broke it into even half those 13 designs, as opposed to something like I Heart New York, which is the same logo on everything, suddenly I
Right.
had like 5 adult sizes of a single train, and people would come in and go, okay, we'll take the A, the F, and the 1, and not interested in the others. Another company would say, oh, we need the J and the R, whatever. So it was like all these little tiny sales, not the economy of scale of it.
Right.
So with the map finally, um, that's one that everybody kind of wanted and needed. So that was good.
And explain the mapped idea. How is it laid out and how do you decide what map goes where?
So there are a couple of ways we've done it, and now we've done the map on a lot of accessories too, and those are really cool because we print on the fabric and then make it into an accessory. So again, it's not just plopping a little piece of map in the center, it's the whole thing. And we've even done subway map linings, like a one color lining, so even the insides are cool.
Oh,
Um,
that-
yeah, those are fun. But so we're doing the map two ways. One is we stripped out all the background, which is very busy, and just left the lines and the text. So your eye can focus. Oh, there's my stop in Brooklyn, or oh, there's Times Square, or there's Wall Street. You can really see it, and it's a very cool graphic because those bright primary colors. Blacks are always most important because black is such a subway-ish color when you're underground. And so that's that design. And then I don't know if you can see it here, but the other way we do it is to put the map on the whole shirt. And that has every part of the map, the water, the
yeah.
bridges that go between it, and on the sleeves, on the front, on the back, and that's cool. So there are a couple different ways we treat the map.
And how much uh, does your t-shirt cost? Like, what's the price point?
At this point, they are around the map ones are in the $30 range.
And
Uh,
that's doing it with China through, you still do through China?
China, I have had them also made in India. They have, so there are some places that have the capability, but um, they're such ambitious shirts because of all those colors. So if you compare us to I Heart New York, which I hate to,
Right.
but they have like a 3-color logo that goes on just on the front of a shirt. So they can buy a shirt anywhere. They can put that
Okay.
3-color logo on it again and again and again and again and bring in container loads of these shirts very inexpensively, right? And the economy of scale is there because that's that one logo over and over. For us, it's so ambitious that we print the map on a shirt on a panel, and then we cut that panel down to size so you have a little bit less map on a size small than you do on a size double XL, right? So it's and then you sew the shirt together. So we don't put it on just an existing shirt that we could source somewhere. These are made from scratch. And
Right.
so it's quite a different animal. So they're expensive to make. So we can't sell them cheaply because we can't afford to because of our costs.
Now, do you only sell online or do you sell in the gift shops? You know, those Times Square gift shops that are around. Do you sell there or how do we get to you?
So we have I would say more than 90% of our sales are to stores. And the stores we sell to, because we can't make cheap shirts, even the A train, F train shirts, those are made in small volume, so they're not inexpensive. So we're kind of trapped into kind of having a pricier shirt. We can't, even in back in the day, Sandy, and you remember seeing those signs in Times Square, like, whatever, two for $10 or whatever. We've never been able to do that. That's less than our shirts cost to make. But so we sell to a lot of museum stores and attractions like One World Observatory. We've made them some really nice things, and um, we have a whole collection at Museum of the City of New York, of course, New York Transit Museum. So more upscale places um, and more upscale boutiques. We have been sold at places like Macy's and Urban Outfitters,
Okay.
but they're very challenging as a small business to ship to them. They put a lot of barriers in the way for forever getting paid in full. Or
Right.
Urban Outfitters, as an example, would come to us and they make most of their own clothing themselves, right? So they'd come to me and they would say, okay, we want this product. And, what will that cost? And I would tell them and think, well, it's cool to be in Urban Outfitters and there's the potential for a big sale. So I'd give them like the best price I possibly could. And they go, no. And I was like, no, well, what are you thinking? And so they'd say if I was asking 850 wholesale for a shirt, they'd say like, you know, 650.
Right.
And I knew that was what they would pay if they went out to have a shirt made, but their shirt wouldn't be as ambitious and it wouldn't have a license to pay for. So they just wanted the same prices they could get on their own. It's like, I'll strip my prices down as low as I can, but I'm not gonna, put myself in the hole. It was hard not to. And same with Macy's, not about price so much as about they have all these shipping requirements that are quite detailed. And if you get any little thing wrong, they give you a chargeback so that at the end of the day, you've barely broken even if you have. So they were actually our
But
very first customer.
I see all these celebrities in no time, they throw up some clothes, they're in Macy's, they're in Saks, they're in all the top stores. Do you think there's a double standard for the
Ooh.
average man versus those kind of, you know, celebrity clients? I've seen some of those clothes and I'm like, some of those clothes are not that well made. And my mom was a seamstress. I know
Oh,
a well-made outfit. And some of them, the stripes don't match, or I know that's old school, but a really good, well-made garment, like your seams and your stripes match. And I look at them and I'm going, I'm not gonna pay, and I'm cheap with clothes because I know good clothes. I'll pay money for good clothing, but if it's just gonna be a cheap thing, I'm not gonna buy your clothes because I don't think it's good. So for $30, a celebrity would probably pay $100, charge $100 just for the name of that. So I don't think your stuff is expensive at all.
no, it's not. And actually, Sandy, it's interesting because it means something to me. Like I said, I was in a working class, middle class family, and I think that our brand, although I do believe we twisted it upscale, to make it be cool to wear, but at the same time, I want it to be affordable, you know? I could try to sell less at a higher price point, but I like that it's affordable. I like that it's the people's. I say it's New York City's own clothing line.
And if you're a tourist, you can definitely afford to go home with one. I've seen t-shirts with nothing but a little stamp on it for $55 and I just walk by. I'm like, it's a t-shirt. There's nothing different about it. Sometimes it's not even 100% cotton, or so why am I spending that kind of money? So when I see a well-made thing that will last, especially like your mapped product, I definitely feel that's a heirloom kind of product that you
Thank
keep.
you. Yeah, I think it's also real. You know what I mean? It's a real part of New York. So I remember when I first conceived this, it was like there was like all these the Big Apple. They put an apple on a t-shirt. It was like, okay, but what does that really have to do with New York? When you buy my line, you're buying a piece of the city in a way. And we're officially licensed to sell that piece of the city.
Right.
So I like that part.
And so what does your husband say now with your horrible idea?
He says I work too hard for not enough money. And he is right. I love my
What
brand.
about your kids? I mean, do they realize you've started this? Do they help now with, making this a reality for you or even bigger reality?
So I have one son. He just turned 34, and he 2 years ago moved out to Seattle from New York. And he grew up, I would say, feeling kind of resentful of how hard I was working.
Mm,
And that he one time was interviewed when we were being interviewed for, I'm just looking up here. I think it might have been Money Magazine. It was, a fairly decent sized publication, but one of them that interviewed me, and he said he felt like my business was his preferred sibling.
oh,
That I
oh,
preferred, that of the two, of him or my business, that he felt like he was in second place, which was extremely hurtful. But I also thought this is his only experience in life,
yes.
and so the fact that I would be working at homes, on the business. I've never had an outside office. It's always been out of my home.
Yeah.
And the fact that when I was an actor, and doing this, I could pick him up at school a lot of times when many other parents couldn't, or, uh, you know, have time to go to some of those games and stuff like that. He took that part for granted, but he didn't like it when I was in the warehouse all weekend picking orders
Right,
because things were
right.
going well, but not well enough to hire people to do it for me and stuff like
Did you
that.
ever take him with you to?
Uh, I did when he was in middle school. Sometimes I'd bring him and a couple of friends because, of course, that made it easier to help me count inventory. This was before I had QuickBooks to help me keep track of inventory. And I'd pay them and I'd give them lunch, and every one of them wanted to do it once. It wasn't very fun, I guess. And so, yeah, he saw it up close and personal, but didn't have the perspective on it. And he's still, from the outside, you'd think he really wasn't particularly, you know,
Interested, yeah.
excited by it. But it was interesting. I was visiting, and my husband and I were visiting him in Seattle, and we have some my an uncle and aunt who live out there, and their kids, because my uncle is 2 months younger than me, actually, one of those odd family things. Um, his grown kids are a little bit older than my son. So we were all hanging out together at their house, and it was so nice. And somebody asked me about my business, and I said, oh, President Clinton's worn our t-shirts, and a lot of celebrities and stuff like that. And he piped up, yeah, that band Wheatus? Not only do they wear her shirts, but one of them's, one of their music videos where they're singing a very popular song, they're wearing it in that. And I almost got whiplash hearing that. It was like, oh, you actually have something
No,
good to say.
he's
So that was nice.
secretly proud of you. He's secretly proud of you, Lynn. They don't always
Maybe,
say that.
maybe, don't know. But the map thing actually brings me to the other story, my new brand.
Oh, I didn't know you had a new brand.
I
Do
do.
tell.
So
Do
just
tell.
before just before COVID, um, for years, every time I do a trade show or meet people from the rest of the country, they'd say, "Oh, I love your map products. Can you do something like this for our city?" Um, and it was like, you name it, LA, Miami, Chicago, St. Louis, people are always saying, "Can you do this idea, but with my city?" And I knew that I had all the inventory I could afford to hold just doing it for New York. So the idea of how would I ever hold inventory for these other cities, I think it would break me as a company to try to do that. Plus, I don't have sales reps in those cities, and it would
Well,
mean a whole structure that I really didn't feel I had the stomach to build. And then I got a call from Promotional Products Magazine that said, "We saw this messenger bag you made with a New York subway map on it. We think it's really cool. Do you mind if we feature it in our magazine?" I said, "No, it's fine. Go ahead." So they did that. And sure enough, after they showed it, I started getting calls from promotional products distributors saying, "That's really a cool bag. Can you do this with our area, our city for our client?" And for this time around, I knew enough to shut up and listen. And so what I came to realize was in the promotional products industry, you create something, you get paid for it, you ship it out the door, and you don't hold the inventory. It's a special order. And so I thought, wow, maybe I could do custom map products, but for this other industry. The promotional products industry is a $25 billion a year industry. So that's nice to get a little piece of that. So I developed what I needed in the way of templates and software and everything that it took to create these custom maps, putting all the pieces together, and started researching where to get these things made. And so now we have a whole new brand called Mapped Gear, MAPT gear.com. And that's what we're doing. Unfortunately, it launched right before COVID. So all the meetings and conferences went away, which was upsetting. And at the same time, all of our Subway stores that sold our Subway gear closed their doors. So it was a very rough time.
yeah.
But Adweek called our concept the anti-swag swag bag, which I just loved. I'm forever grateful for that, and did a very long article about the concept. And other industry publications picked up on it and basically said, this gal might have a really good idea because the industry knows that a lot of this stuff gets thrown away. If you give me something with your logo on it, unless that logo means something to me, I'm not going to keep it. I'm going to try to donate it to somebody or, a lot of the conference bags never make it out of the hotel room. People
True.
use it to carry their stuff around and the same thing with all the other swag. It's like, you know what I mean? Like, okay, And then for business gifts, if you work for Goldman Sachs and they give you a beautiful To Me bag and it has Goldman Sachs written on it, well, you don't necessarily want to be walking around when you're not at work with Goldman Sachs or whatever prestigious company it is, on your thing. You could buy your own Tumi bag if you work for Goldman Sachs, sorry, and it doesn't have to have a logo on it. So to me, there's a whole range of, and yet, by the way, people have been buying our map products for over 20 years. So we know that people like maps. It's interesting. And so if you have a map and it shows your company's location or locations on a map, that's like, oh, you add your logo there, but it's still the majority of it is this cool map. And we have any number of kinds of products we can do that map on. So
Yeah.
that's starting to take off, and that's exciting. And that brand doesn't have the ceiling on it that New York City Subway has, where the stores that sell our line are only in New York City. So this has opened up our world, and
You don't have to get a license for the map
no.
for the from the different places because that's public information.
Well, we create our own. So
Okay.
we create our own map showing the area that the company wants to show. Either it shows their locations across the state or across the country or across the world. Um, or else it's where they're a venue they're having. So if they're having their company meeting in New Orleans, we can do New Orleans. We'll show you where the French Quarter is, where your hotel is, where the different places you can go to around there are. And it's the possibilities are endless, and it's just so much cooler than most of the swag that's out there, which I don't think there's a lot of ROI for most of the swag because it's not really interesting enough to people to hold on to it.
Well, I can say that it has a lot of potential because it could be international. You can have a map for anywhere in this whole world. So you do have pretty much unlimited potential to grow that business. Now, how will you be marketing and selling, and to whom do you want to sell this new product to?
So basically, anybody that buys swag or business gifts is a potential customer, or places like colleges, universities. Their location is important to them. We can show their campus on a map. Uh, it's such a broad range of business to business kind of sales that we can do, because the promotional products industry is huge. But nobody, we're at the very beginning stages of telling people they have a choice, they have an option. Hey, talk to us. We just want to talk to you. We'll show you what we can do for you. We'll collaborate with you to create something that people really want, and that will elevate your brand and show how important you are, how much breadth your company has in terms of their locations, what a cool single location you have. And the interesting thing that happened as a side piece to this custom product business is we're also now making custom Subway products. So
Mm,
Zabar's, one of our local specialty stores, is a block from
yeah.
the 79th Street subway station. And now they have coffee mugs, black coffee mugs with a red inside, matching the red one train. And it says Zabar's 79th Street and the one train on it. And they have
Well,
t-shirts and tote bags and apron and all these things we've made for them. And so stores are starting to also sell things with the maps we make on them. Coffee shop in Brooklyn, that it has a map of the neighborhood on it and their logo. So the possibilities are endless. We're a very small company, and we're just trying to get that tiger by the tail moment going.
I I think if I go to a Yankee Stadium for a baseball game, it's one of the few places where I buy swag. It's
And the
really,
thing
it's
is,
just one
it's
of the few
branded
places.
merchandise. It's not like swag that gets given away. You have to pay for it, right? So yeah, and yes, Yankees is one of the most beloved brands across the world. You can't go anywhere, right, without seeing a New York Yankees cap on somebody. And
And
there's like,
New York, I would totally get it if it had like the New York map with the New York Yankees logo, with the little dot of where the stadium is, right?
yeah, we
Go
have a
right with
Yankee Stadium baseball that we make now that's really beautiful. We haven't been able to get a cross-branded license with Major League Baseball. They use their own vendors only, which, makes me sad. But yeah, New York is a big deal. And that's one of the iconic brands I've tried to think about, and you could probably be much better at this than me, Sandy, but that some of the handful of truly iconic brands out there, like Disney, all you have to see is the little hat with the ears and you know what it is. Obviously, people buy that day in and day out. Coca-Cola, people have such a soft spot for Coca-Cola, and it's an iconic logo and brand, and even the shape of their bottle, which I think they've trademarked. And, there are a handful of different sports teams that have a brand so strong that even just with their logo, people want them and will pay for them. But those are rare.
They
So,
are. When I go away, let's say I go to I'll say Paris because my mother just brought my little Paris souvenir about 20 minutes before I got on this call.
oh,
So let's say I go to Paris and I want a shirt with the Eiffel Tower, that or all those things, or the train, which I've taken their train there. To me, that is more special than just buying a shirt that says Paris. Because what I can't remember when I get home are the names of the subway stops. I think Grand Army Plaza was one of them because I missed it. I was supposed to go there. But I can't remember the street. Okay, where's the Eiffel Tower? Right? I can't remember the finer details of when you're there and going through the streets. And having a map, a shirt with a map that says Eiffel Tower or, Grand Army Plaza or whatever, keeps that memory fresh.
and if it was a street map, you could even go like, oh, remember that little place that was a
Yeah.
few blocks from the Eiffel Tower where we found that crepe place that was so amazing, right? Like, or
The whole
that
story
street market,
around
that
it.
street fair that open, it's open only on the weekends. That's right
Yes,
here, right?
yes. That there's a story there that people can tell more so than, oh, you see me walking and you go, New Yorker. I'm like, no, my brother bought this for me.
Yes.
There's more of a storyline, I think, that you need to emphasize that doesn't really come through, but it's there. It's more telling the story of your trip or telling the story of the place where you come from. Everybody heard about Bed-Stuy or, you know,
Oh boy, Brooklyn. Brooklyn is hot as a pistol.
yeah, so to have a t-shirt that says like whether it's a train or just the map of Brooklyn, and I could say, this right here is where I came from, right?
Yeah.
Canarsie, I'm a Canarsie girl. I'm a East Flatbush or whatever makes that very real. I would definitely give that as a gift.
And there are so many companies. I'm just talking to a logistics company right now, and I was at a conference and I met um, three or four of them who are have warehousing logistics places in the New York area, Connecticut, JFK, New
Right.
Jersey, but they have uh, those same types of places all across the country. They're a major logistics company, including on the West Coast. Well, I want to make them a map of the United States showing all their locations because and have their logo in a beautiful, map. I want it to be a beautiful map. And it's in an instant, what it's going to tell you is, hey, this company is a big deal. They're national, you know, Like anywhere my stuff comes into port, I'm going to be able to grab it. But I also know they have, places in the middle of the country, and that's important to me too. Like it tells your story. Like how much
Yeah,
better than just BFG logistics. You know what I mean? So I'm very
definitely.
excited about it.
Well, give us your information as to where we can find you, and we'll definitely make sure people on this podcast know where to go to get their stuff.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, I got to spread the word. Without millions of dollars in marketing money, people have to help us out here. Like, it's a cool idea. Tell your friends.
And what's your website?
So, two of them. So, Mapped Gear is MAPT gear.com. And that'll show you some of our products and hopefully start a conversation with you. And the other is a retail site for nycsubwayline.net. And that has our subway things for sale.
Fantastic. No, thank you. Thank you for sharing this. I believe that this will be a really good pivot for you or addition to what you already have.
Yeah,
It's
and the
just
combo
much
is interesting too. I'm very excited about it. And frankly, honestly, I'm no spring chicken. Um, but what I find is that I'm a creative person. Years back, I would have said I'm an actor, and I loved that. But when I sort of couldn't be an actor anymore, because of circumstances beyond my control, like I'm not Benjamin Button, and I'm not going to age backwards. So when that happened, this was another place for me to put my creativity, and now I've got yet another place to put it. And I love seeing people wearing our stuff, carrying our stuff. It's all I can do not to stop people on the streets when I see them. It's thrilling to me. So I really still enjoy it. And I want to be successful because I want my idea to be out there.
that's such a great segue because, well, two things we have in common that we didn't know, you didn't know. I went to Erasmus Hall High School of Performing Arts to be an actress and also went to Brooklyn College Theater because I thought acting was just the greatest thing.
It is.
Unlike you, while I was in Brooklyn College, I noticed all my friends were babysitters or dog walkers, or their jobs were tailored around when they could go to an audition.
Waiters. Yeah.
Waiter,
The whole hospitality industry survives on actors.
but I kept saying, that's not me. I need to make money. And this seems like, especially in the 80s, right? There weren't a lot of Black actors and more actors than actresses at that time. And I just took a look at that and said, I need to do something else because I don't think I'm going to sustain myself unless I'm one of the few that becomes, an Eddie Murphy type figure in the 80s. You just didn't see that, especially in the women. And I changed my mind really quickly and said, I need to get paid when I go to work. I really need to make money. And I was helping my mom as well. So for me, it was just, okay, Sandi, this was very nice. And I love theater. I go to the theater still all the time. I always have a theater ticket someplace around my house that
Wow.
I go to. But as a job, I just decided that wasn't for me anymore. And I don't miss it once I made the decision. I don't miss it because I still get my theater fix because now I can afford to go to the theater. I still don't buy orchestra seats unless I buy TDF.
Yeah. Come on. We're New Yorkers.
We're in the same theater, I actually like looking from like down so I see the whole stage. Where when I sit in the front, I only see the people, like I can't see the big picture of the entire stage, which I like. So my friends always get upset. They're like, why didn't we get orchestras? I'm like, I like to see the whole thing. So, yes. So that was one thing we had in common was the New York theater experience. And then for you to build your business, you talk about, you're not a spring chicken. Well, I'm not either. I'm not springing anywhere anymore. But I've always wanted to create a product. I've never done a product. I've always done services. And I've had this product in my head
Ooh,
for years and years and years. And I still haven't seen one. I won't even say what it is, but I still haven't seen it. But you're inspiring me to go take a look to create a product. I just thought product businesses were so much harder than a service business.
they're brutal. I didn't realize as an actor I was in a service business. I didn't know anything about business, but yeah, it was a service business. So it was quite shocking when I had to deal with things like warehousing and inventory and all that stuff. That was like not expected and kind of like an albatross around your neck.
And after
Um,
this podcast, I'll give you the name of someone that I can introduce you to about warehousing and those kind of things.
That would be great. And yes, I do though find it very exciting to have created a product that, all it takes to get it out there is a little bit overwhelming sometimes, but it is satisfying. It really is.
Great. I'm definitely going to think about that again. I would need a patent and that whole thing, but you just
If I
might.
can help, let me know.
Yes, I
Let
will.
me
I
know.
will absolutely call. I'll let you know the product and I'll let you know. I just haven't seen anyone with it. And I created one by accident.
Wow.
I came up with this product and I was in a restaurant and like several people came up to me and said, "Where did you buy this?" And
Wow.
I said,
That's a good sign.
"Yeah." I said, "Well, no, I didn't. It's not something that I bought." And each time I used it, everyone came up, the people in the restaurant kept asking me, "Where did you get this from?" And
Wow.
there are versions of it out there, but there's nothing like what I had. And the thing is, the sample that I had, I have no idea what I did with it.
Oh no.
I have no idea. It was just a fluke. It was a product that I used for something else. And people, this is just perfect. But I shouldn't go to my grave without giving it a shot, is what I'm thinking.
Well, when I came up with a subway idea, the very same day, I thought, I have to do this. I have to do this now because if I don't do it, somebody else is going to do it.
Yes.
I thought it's that good an idea, which is what you're saying. You keep looking for it out there, thinking somebody else is going to come up with this idea, right?
Well, I actually had that experience with a good friend back in the late 70s. She was the first person I ever saw do what today is called a weave. The very first. I had never seen anyone so. She took a wig, like they have those half wigs that you put on, and she literally sewed it into her hair,
Wow.
and she would wear it for weeks and then took it off and washed the wig. And I kept saying to her, that's a great idea. It's just, no one can tell that it's not your hair because she just combed her hair backwards. And it came from, she was getting alopecia, which was not
Oh,
prevalent at the time.
yeah.
And she had very long hair and thick, but there was like a bald spot
Oh,
happening, in the front. And so she would either wear a ponytail to cover it up, but then she came up with that idea of taking a wig and just sewing it in and leaving it, and you could take it out and wash it. And And I'm like, that's so brilliant. You should really do this. And then she made some for friends who, who saw it and said, that's such a great idea. And she just did it as a favor for friends, like something that she did. And today, when I look at the weave industry, like, we missed that boat.
Wow. So she never capitalized on it really.
Oh no, to her, it was just something she did for friends who were,
Hobby.
losing their
Yeah,
hair.
a hobby solving a problem for herself and others.
Want one, I'll get one, I'll make one for you. And she'd give it as gifts and different things, but she never made it into a business. And I really think she would have been one of the first women to succeed, because a lot of the wigs that came out, a lot of men had them, owned the companies. But I said, maybe I should not let that opportunity pass again with my product.
Now I can't wait to talk to you offline to find out about it.
I'll tell you
Because
all
we're not
about
going to tell
it.
anybody. So it's done.
Thank you so much,
Thank
though,
you,
for coming on.
Sandi.
And hopefully, this podcast will help you get a little closer towards your goal of distributing worldwide.
Thank you so much. I hope so too. And I appreciate the opportunity. And I appreciate, even though we've known each other for a long time, getting to know you a little better. So thank you so much for that.
You're welcome. This is Dr. Sandi. Thank you so much for sharing your journey on the first, where no two stories are alike, even if the circumstances are similar. Let this discussion serve as inspiration for others to show what's possible, and more importantly, to produce seconds and thirds.